What kind of world are we living in? When a coup happens in Africa, and instead of panic, the streets erupt in celebration? Western cameras rush to show tanks rolling, soldiers in fatigues, leaders being toppled. They expect fear. They expect chaos. But what do they see? They see mothers ululating. They see students raising fists. They see entire cities flooding the streets with joy. Why? Because for the first time in decades, people believe someone is finally listening. This is not about coups. This is about dignity. This is about Africa saying enough is enough. They called it democracy. They flew in advisors, set up ballot boxes, sent monitors from Paris, Washington, London. But what good is democracy when it is built on stolen wealth? What good are elections when the candidates are puppets, chosen not by the people but by foreign embassies? For too long, Africa was forced to play a theater show. Leaders who sold resources cheaply to outsiders were labeled Democrats. But any leader who dared to resist, Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah, was branded a dictator and removed. So when the soldiers marched in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger, the people knew exactly what it meant. In Bamako, a market woman shouted into a journalist's microphone, "Democracy did not feed my children, but maybe sovereignty will?" In Ouagadougou, students painted on the walls, "Our gold is not for sale. Our future is not for rent." And in Niamey, a crowd of thousands sang, "Better the rule of our own soldiers than the chains of foreign masters." These are not the words of fear. They are the words of a people who have suffered too long. Into this storm stepped young captains and colonels, men in their 30s, unpolished, unafraid. Assimi Goïta in Mali, Abdourahmane Tiani in Niger, and Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso. The West laughed at first. Too young, too inexperienced, too reckless. But the people did not laugh. They cheered, because in these young men they saw themselves, tired of waiting, tired of excuses, ready to fight for a future. When Traoré stood before his people and declared, "We will no longer kneel to anyone," the crowd erupted. It was not just a speech. It was a promise. Let's speak the truth the West does not want to hear. France controlled the CFA franc, draining billions from African economies every year. Western corporations controlled the mines, uranium in Niger, gold in Burkina Faso, oil in Nigeria. IMF loans came with chains, not freedom. So when African leaders resisted, when they expelled foreign troops, when they tore up contracts signed in smoke-filled boardrooms in Paris and Washington, the world called it dangerous. But the people called it liberation, because sovereignty without resources is just an empty word. For decades, Africa was told, "You are weak because you are divided." But today, something new is rising. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Guinea. Together, they say, if you sanction one of us, you sanction all of us. If you attack one of us, you attack all of us. This is not just alliance. This is family. This is the rebirth of the Pan-African dream that Sankara once carried. In Dakar, women closed markets and marched with banners. "Our resources, our future." In Accra, students shouted, "No more regime change." And in Addis Ababa, the African Union began to whisper about a doctrine that terrified the West. The Ouagadougou Protocol, a declaration that Africa alone decides Africa's destiny. And what of the world? In Washington, panic. Advisors warned, "Africa is slipping out of our control." In Paris, anger. Politicians fumed that centuries of dominance were vanishing overnight. But in Moscow, celebration. In Beijing, opportunity. In Doha, investment. The old masters wanted Africa isolated. Instead, Africa found new friends, new partners, new doors opening. But here is the question. Are coups the destination? No. Coups are only the spark. The fire must burn into something greater. Digital sovereignty. Africa building its own internet exchanges. Beyond Silicon Valley, energy sovereignty, harnessing nuclear, solar, and hydro to power our future. Space sovereignty, launching African satellites by 2040, watching the world from above. This is not about changing presidents. This is about changing the system. As Traoré said in one of his speeches, Sovereignty is never given. It is taken. And once taken, it must be defended. So let me ask you, when market women shut down their stalls to march for sovereignty, is that fear? Or is it courage? When miners walk out of shafts holding banners that say, "Our minerals, our future," is that chaos? Or is it dignity? When students write, "Africa will not be anyone's pawn," on the walls of their campuses, is that rebellion? Or is it awakening? The West calls it instability. Africa calls it rebirth. The countdown has already begun. The old order is trembling. The new Africa is rising. Do you believe Liberia, Ghana, and others will join this movement? Do you think the West will allow Africa to stand? Or will they strike back harder? And most importantly, is this Africa's Sankara moment reborn? Tell us in the comments below. Let your voice be heard. Because history is not written by those who kneel. It is written by those who rise. And Africa is rising.